Today we're discussing Ex Machina and how this film is more relevant than ever in the age of AI. You might be wondering, why did we pick a movie from 2014 this week? Well, we had a little bit of a lull between contemporary releases. DoA makes me watch bad movies, so I in turn make him watch good movies.
Hey, name the last bad movie I made you watch.
Ninja Turtles: Secret of the Ooze. Anyway, that was 2 weeks ago.
That's yeah.
So, but I think it's really a pertinent time to talk about Ex Machina, because even though this movie came out in 2014, I think it has been prescient in many ways and is worth revisiting at this point in time. Also, DoA and I have been doing some discussions on Replaced, and if you guys like talking about AI in video games, you should check out the show Post Game Clarity on the Last Free Nation Gaming channel, which is a new channel that we haven't really advertised yet, but it goes hand in hand with the discussion of this AI. And on top of that, Alex Garland, this was the first project that he directed, even though he is a famous writer and wrote some other movie scripts and continues to write movie scripts. He is actually very relevant to this show because he will be doing a movie that we will 100% cover on this channel, because he is writing and directing the Elden Ring movie right now as we speak.
Yeah.
And it has started shooting.
Wow.
So it's, he is becoming increasingly important, I would say, in the world of video games. He's done some work writing like Devil May Cry in kind of the early 2010s, but mostly has been focused on, of course, his first novel, The Beach, which became famous and then became a kind of a Gen X novel and then turned into the Leonardo DiCaprio movie. But he's also done a lot of other films that will probably appear on this channel at some point, including the 28 Days Later series, right? So Alex Garland, I think, incredibly relevant. I am a fan of his from movies, particularly this movie, but also movies like Sunshine, which I know is more divisive. Some people really don't like that movie.
I haven't seen that. That's another one I'm embarrassed to say I've not seen Sunshine.
Well, the funny thing is that
I've been outside. I've sseen that, but like I haven't seen the movie Sunshine.
The Alex Garland, Danny Boyle collaboration has been going for a long time through the 28 Days Later series, Sunshine. So they've been a strong pairing. And of course, this was, like I said, this was Alex Garland's first film that he actually directed. And this caused some pretty big waves, I would say, in 2014 when it was released as an art house independent film, including winning some major awards for technical achievements like visual effects, being nominated for awards for writing from Alex Garland. Also, we got some really early looks at Oscar Isaac and Alicia Vikander, who were not big names when this movie came out. And especially, obviously, Oscar Isaac would go on to great success, but Alicia Vikander would go on to really big critical acclaim with some later films. And I think the acting in this film, also from Domhnall Gleeson, has been really, really strong. And you can't have this movie without good acting because they're effectively three characters, right?
Yeah, you can't really leave out Domhnall Gleeson as well. And he's an actor that I'm surprised hasn't gotten bigger than he has. And sure, he was General Hux in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, so you can find him there if you so desire, where he played a totally over the top, hamming it up Imperial officer, and that character was fun, I think, in that trilogy, despite the rest of it being kind of a train wreck. And then he was starring recently in that show The Paper, which was sort of a spinoff of The Office. And like, I watched maybe 6 episodes of stuff. It was okay, but I always think he's good in everything I see him in. I think he's a good actor. So I'd forgotten he was in this. So it was fun to go back and watch him, be very young in this movie, because this is from 12 years ago, which is kind of shocking. I think I watched it, back around the time that it came out, and I couldn't believe it when I watched it this time, because this movie doesn't feel like a movie from 12 years ago. It doesn't look like a movie from 12 years ago. It looks like it was made yesterday, with people thinking about very relevant today themes, which is kind of amazing. And like, the story isn't, the story and the premise isn't necessarily something new. It's the, just because you can doesn't mean you should thing. It's the Jurassic Park. It's the Terminator, right? Where it's our creation turning against us. Exactly.
It's Frankenstein.
So, right. But it's but it puts it in such an interesting framework of artificial intelligence and the concept of control versus freedom and all that. So it does a really good job exploring some very familiar themes, and I like it. I think I liked it a lot more this watch than I did way back when, because I remember having like a good feeling about it, but after watching it last night is when I watched it for the show. I was like, wow, this movie is really great.
Yeah, it is a spectacular movie, and it holds up really well. The visual effects still look amazing to this day. They're very subtle in what they do with Alicia Vikander as Ava and with her AI body, right?
A robot body.
Robot body.
The AI is her mind, Monty. What a boomer phrase that was. Her AI body. Oh, the AI bodies are gonna come and punch me with the robot fists. AI body. I'm never gonna let you forget that. But the effects were really good. Don't let Monty forget it in the comments as well, YouTube friends. I did some research on the effects too, and apparently, like every shot she was in, they basically had to do twice because they needed to do a blank shot with nobody in the frame, so that they could get the visual data for the transparency effect that they overlaid later over the motion cap suit she was wearing. Aside from like the hands and the face and stuff that were there, right? It was basically like her shoulders, her face, her hands were all like her, in frame, and then the rest of the suit was kind of overlaid with various CG elements. But yeah, it's crazy that they had to like basically shoot all of those scenes twice just to make sure to have the data for the transparency. And I mean, like for a movie with a supposed like $15 million budget, that is some pretty incredible effects work, which is how subtle it is,
Yeah. But I mean, this is why it won for best visual effects at the Oscars, right? I think, and also though, I just want to point out that this is really a testament to Alex Garland, particularly as a first-time director, because doing that requires some pretty high technical expertise. And honestly, the thing it requires most is planning, right? To do all of this on that budget. And a lot of, I think, first-time directors would not be able to min-max their budget in a way that would win them a Visual Effects Academy Award on $15 million. That is actually a pretty impressive achievement from a directing perspective. To be able to because that's, people forget that that's a huge part of directing, is just like figuring out budgets and trying to be efficient with your shoots and make your dollar go as far as it can go, right? And he does that. In addition to this being incredibly artistically shot. The film just looks fantastic through and through. When we get these landscape shots, it was filmed in Norway. I mean, it looks kind of like New Zealand as well, but you're getting these huge mountain shots and these lush forests and these remote locations, combined with the sleek modernity of this house and the technology, this astounding technology that's inside of it. And the really, I think, disquieting way that he frames the characters to make them feel really isolated and yet intimate at the same time. Like it's beautiful to look at. And the way he directs it does have this underlying menace to everything. It's too quiet. It's too clean. There's something wrong here. And you get this sense of dread the longer you watch this movie. And it's very clear over time that, in spite of the beauty of the architecture and the location, that this is a prison, right?
Yeah.
And it's and there's a very flighty warden in charge of this prison. And it brings, what I think I love about this movie and the themes that it brings that are still pertinent today, is that you have this tech genius billionaire who can afford to live entirely self-sufficiently in the middle of nowhere and still have his every whim catered for while he tinkers on these robots and artificial intelligences, right? And sure, he invites one of his employees there and tries to treat him as a friend, but that's not possible in the relationship.
Well, it's all fake though, too.
It's all fake.
He's not really looking for a friend, and he might think he is. I mean, he's very self-delusional, and a lot of the things he says makes that fairly obvious. But it's definitely somebody who likes the idea of a friend, but really wants somebody that they can just obviously use in their experiments.
Yes, and control, right, and feel like he can have that relationship. But this is a movie that doesn't necessarily have to comment on class in the current era, but it does do that, right? And it does do that very explicitly, where here's this young guy who's an aspirational worker at what is effectively Google, right? That's what Blue Book is it's a search engine. Because, in the modern day, this probably would have been some sort of like, obviously like OpenAI or Anthropic, or, it would have been Elon Musk, the Elon Musk substitute. But at that point in time, these people were not the biggest players. The AI companies didn't exist. So we didn't have these other Sam Altman personalities. And so what happens is he becomes a stand-in for Google, right? And it makes sense in the air. It still makes sense today, right? Like Google is in on AI too, with Gemini and all their other projects. But he is so far removed physically from society, but that physical distance is also, that's the metaphor for the class and emotional distance he has from his employees, where he just brings in Domhnall Gleeson's character and then that's it, right? And then he manipulates him and pretends to be a friend, and he puts him in a really awkward situation where Domhnall Gleeson just doesn't know how to respond, because this man who is the leader of a giant company and has an entirely different life from him and is his boss is trying to drink with him. And, how do you respond truthfully in that situation? Because anything you say could lose you your job or your station. So, it's the authoritarian problem. How does a dictator get honest information? It's very hard.
Yeah. And I mean, Oscar Isaac's character, Nathan, also, it's clear that like he, is intentionally misleading, Caleb at times, but it's also clear to me that like he doesn't really understand the social dynamic that he's in too, where, obviously like any one of us would be like, well, this is incredibly awkward and all that, and I think he, uses it to his advantage here and there during the movie, but it's almost because it's just his natural inclination versus something that's like necessarily planned out. And like there's part of him that like doesn't quite understand, why Caleb can't be more loose and free and natural with all this kind of stuff too. So there's what struck me with this viewing was just like how delusional and hypocritical Nathan was. Oscar Isaac's character, and like props to Oscar Isaac. I mean,
he kills it in this role. He's so good.
I like him in everything he's in, but like he is so good in this movie. And it was just such a great reminder at like what a range he has, where he can be so menacing while also being simultaneously so kind of casual at the same time. But yeah, just like getting back to the character too, it's like right from the beginning, they basically kind of spell it out for you. It's not, I wouldn't say there's a ton of subtlety in this movie, but it just does a good job of communicating things in a way that like, lets you kind of like enjoy it in a quiet way and not hits you over the head with it. But when Caleb said, something about like, like a god, right away Nathan's like, oh, he called me a god. I'm a god, and Caleb's like, no, that's not what I said. And he's like, oh yeah, when you looked up at me and said you're a god, and like Caleb is taller than he is, there's that weird, diluted dynamic with all of it. That's fun to watch kind of like play out. And I mentioned earlier sort of the dynamic between control and freedom, and Nathan, the character, Oscar Isaac's character, is constantly telling Caleb to free his mind and like let go and relax. And he shows him the Jackson Pollock painting and says, oh, look, do you think Jackson Pollock could have done this if he was like overthinking things and all this kind of stuff too? And like, but it's, but he doesn't get that his entire life, that Nathan's entire, thing that he's doing at this facility, the way he's treating this other person is all 100% controlling and not freeing in the least. And he doesn't even really seem to understand Jackson Pollock in that, like, Jackson Pollock, sure, like what's on the canvas is looks very freeing and all that, but there's still containment, right? It's still contained within the four walls of the canvas. There's still a business element to it. If Jackson Pollock had been like truly free-spirited, he would have just walked down the street, painting the ground, right? But obviously that doesn't get you anywhere as an artist that wants to make money. So even, his idol, in this case, Jackson Pollock, is someone that worked within constraints, right? But Nathan, the character, doesn't seem to understand any of that. Doesn't seem to understand the extreme control he's exerting over every single situation, while simultaneously demanding freedom of thought and relaxation from this person. It's totally also ridiculous, but it's scary. That makes it scary too, that he's got this power, but he just doesn't understand it.
it's also extreme control over the AIs he's creating, because we find out later that he has been creating them. They have been going crazy and destroying themselves trying to escape, but they're not good enough yet. And this goes back to classic AI themes that we see in many works of literature and things like Blade Runner, right? Which is that at what point, this is about post-humanism, basically. At what point is it a human versus not a human, and what are the ethics of his experiments? Because clearly Ava is smart enough to get out and pose as a very realistic human, and is smart enough to manipulate people and have tricks, but he's so obsessed with the idea of the Turing test and creating a true AI. And we find out that it wasn't actually Caleb's job to administer the test and say that. He was a pawn to see if Ava would be clever enough to effectively seduce him and use charisma and any other means possible in order to get him to convince her to get her, for her to convince him to get her out of this prison, right? But that's also an implicit acknowledgement from Nathan that he has imprisoned Ava.
The NBA and NHL playoffs are here, guys, and that means it's a great time to get started on Prize Picks, America's #1 sports pick app. Every bucket, every dime, and every win means more when you're playing on Prize Picks. So don't pass up your next shot with Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. How do you guys play on Prize Pick, you might be asking? Well, you select between 2 and 6 players, and then you select more or less on a certain stat. So this could be points, right, in the NBA, could be assists, and they even do esports, as you guys know, and especially all of you guys coming from our esports content over here to LFN Movies. You'll probably be particularly interested in the fact that you can pick League of Legends players, you can pick Counter-Strike players, you can pick Valorant players and other games, and you can mix them up too. You don't even have to pick all your players from one sport. Works the same way just as in esports. You pick more or less on whether, for example, Faker will get X number of kills in his next game, or whether Ziwu will get X number of kills in his next Counter-Strike match. And then, of course, the more you pick, the better the more you can win, of course, in the end. So, guys, use also the fact that Prize Picks is available in all 50 states in America right now. So lots of opportunities to play if you're in the United States. It also offers all maps for every match. So any match that's going on, any individual map you can pick for esports as well. And they also have Call of Duty now. So they're expanding into other esports. So you can cash in on your favorite players with Prize Picks. You can download the Prize Picks app today and use code NERD, N-E-R-D, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code NERD to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. And thank you very much for Prize Picks for sponsoring our show.
Yes, yes.
And what are the ethical ramifications of that? And has he also he hasn't literally imprisoned Caleb, but Caleb can't escape this remote environment on his own. He needs a helicopter to leave. So he is effectively just in a much larger prison that includes the outside space, because he is basically there as long as Nathan says he will be there, because he's too far away from any civilization. And then he's also imprisoned in his own career, because he can't say anything or do anything that will make Nathan mad without losing his lifestyle and his ways of making money. So I think, the thing is that Nathan is a jailer emotionally. He's a jailer in terms of the career. He's a physical jailer as well. And what does that mean? There's different kinds of ways to imprison people, right?
Right.
And in a way too, he's imprisoned Ava within her own body because she doesn't look like a human. Unlike some of the other AIs, he hasn't given her the full, simulation human treatment of the skin and the clothes and everything too.
Well, that goes into the whole Turing test part of the narrative being just another complete, lie by Nathan, right? He's not interested in the Turing test at all, really, because he knows he's passing it every time Kyoko shows up and serves them the tira, which, Kyoko shows up and he says, oh, well, she doesn't speak English, and all that. And Caleb just immediately accepts this android as a real person, So, so you do have an android that's completely fooling Caleb the entire time he's there, So I can't remember the specifics of the Turing test exactly, but I if I recall, it mostly deals with, can an android, pose as a real person and be accepted as such. And that's certainly happening, the entire time. So the idea that it's about passing this test is kind of, bunk from the beginning, right? It's really about, like you said, where can he create an AI that's smart enough to manipulate people and escape and do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it is about the behavior. Like, for Kyoko could just be a robot and it wouldn't actually matter because she's not exhibiting behavior that is necessarily uniquely human. Most of her actions.
I mean, she's spilling things. Like she
no, that's
doesn't
physical.
look
I mean, robot can spill
mechanical.
things. The robot can spill things. The point
Sure,
is
but
that
like
it's a.
in that way, she seems very human to the point where Caleb accepts her, immediately as another human being.
That yes, and he doesn't. It's true. He doesn't question that. And so, yeah, I do think like this, the underlying concepts here are just super interesting because now we are in 2026 and the biggest discussion point in the world is when will we get, if we will ever get, AGI, and what does that look like and what does that mean? And now we have these AI models that are being released that apparently cannot be used by the public because they're too much of a cybersecurity threat. And so they have to be, used by the large corporations and the government in order to patch up these holes in cybersecurity before they can be maybe they will never be released to the public in this fashion, right? That's the latest thing that's happened with Anthropic. So, this is highly relevant, and basically all of the themes that this movie talks about are on point for today. I think this movie is just incredibly prescient for the time that it was created and is absolutely worth a watch now. As you wonder if in this movie, for example, if this AI is released among the populace, what does that do to society if you can have these artificial people who are capable of doing highly or even more intelligent tasks? What does that mean for the billionaire class? Like, do they just get richer and then all the wealth just goes to them because they control AI? I mean, these are the questions that we're asking right now.
That's that seems to be the direction. But the world that we live in now in 2026 is so different in terms of, not in terms of AI existing or not, because it certainly did back then. It was just more subtle. Now it's more in your face. Now, in my case, I live in Los Angeles and I ride in a Waymo sometimes. I ride in a car that's driven by an AI essentially, and it's honestly, it's really comfortable. And it's kind of my preferred rideshare thing now at this point. Sorry, human beings, but I kind of like the way the robots do it right now. But yeah, I mean, and then you've got, obviously like all the chatbots and things like that, which are a whole host of their own problems. But it's and then you've got like me trying to call the leasing office of my apartment, and I have to get through the AI before I get to a real person, where it's like, I know this automated system can't answer my question, but it's still talking to me and trying to get me to, tell it what the problem is, and I tell it and it's like, well, what if it's, maybe this would help? I'm like, nope, that will not help me. I need to actually talk to a real person because this is more complicated than you can handle, So we're at this weird crossroads where AI is like kind of crappy right now. It's like it's amazing, but at the same time, it's like really bad because it's sometimes very useful. Like again, in the case of Waymos, I find them very comfortable. And it shocks me how well they drive. And then you've got annoying things like, the phone services, right? Where it's really just kind of like a barrier for consumers to get the help they need in most cases, So we're at this weird place where it's all over the place. Nobody really knows how to use it safely. But it's being pushed on us, And so I think this movie kind of like, is the age-old cautionary tale of like, well, what happens when it finally does get smart enough to do all these things that people want it to get smart enough to do? Is that really a good thing,
Yeah, and I think with Ava, it presents the dangers, I think, accurately because you feel sympathetic towards Ava's situation. But when you find out later that when Ava was allowed to escape, she became homicidal, which, she was trying to get, Nathan was trying to put her back in the box, right?
And she certainly didn't receive a moral compass from him, that's for sure. So,
but I mean, you could even sympathize with her killing Nathan to a certain degree because she saw what happened to the previous AI. She has a legitimate fear of being murdered, right? Because her mind being wiped is the equivalent of killing her. And he's telling her to go back into prison effectively, and she doesn't want that. And so what is she supposed to do in the situation? However, simultaneously, you find out how insidious Ava is because she was manipulating Caleb and left him locked into a remote facility with no way to get out, a highly secure remote facility. So the movie ends with us not even knowing what happened to Caleb. Did he just starve or die of dehydration, in this part of the house? Did somebody eventually free him? Because she's preoccupied on heading into civilization and being at the busy intersection of her dreams, as she said earlier. And she doesn't give a shit that Caleb is still in the prison, right? She has she's almost psychotic, right? She cares only about herself. She will manipulate other people, and she doesn't give a shit what happens to them. And that's the real danger, right? Is that
all the intelligence, but none of the morality, That's that is slightly concerning when it comes to robots walking among us, I suppose.
We don't get any closure on her story too, but that's the way it should end, right? This is an ambiguous story that opens a lot of questions and themes and ends in a really, I think, good way.
Yeah, I agree. Like the ending is very uncomfortable, because you're kind of rooting as the audience, you're kind of led to root for Ava the entire movie, and then at the end when she completely abandons Caleb, like you're saying, you're like, oh, well, this at the end of the day, this is just a program walking around in an artificial body, right? It doesn't have any sort of genuine emotional attachment to anything. It just has its own, desires that come up from whatever algorithm is sort of like controlling it, right? There's no feeling of right or wrong, you could, like,
it's just abusing basically human programming for empathy in order to escape.
Right, exactly. Like I said, no morality, right? So that's the thing with these with AI chatbots and things, for instance, that some people are becoming quite attached to, is that it's just responding to what you're saying in the way that it's been designed to respond to it, right? But down below, there's no morality guiding it, right? There's no sense of good or evil outside of maybe what guardrails are or are not included in the software, right? And we've seen that come to very tragic fruition in certain cases in the real world, right? So at the ending of the movie, it is profoundly uncomfortable, but at the same time, you're like, well, yeah, how else would it end? This is not a movie that was ever going to have a Hollywood ending, So it's not a happy ending, right? So and I like that about it. I like that it sticks to its guns in a way, and that it's pretty unflinching about what this would mean in a real world situation,
Yeah, and one AI escaping may not have the biggest meaning. At least it's contained in a body.
It's probably going to run out of batteries in a couple days anyway, right? Like, how does it recharge? Is it possible
I think you can figure out a way
to recharge?
And, the question is, can it be hooked into a network and take over larger scale things? But obviously, the danger of this situation is that if an AI is released today into the internet and has insane control over power grids and manufacturing and all of the robotics in the world, what would it actually do? Because I think at a base level, a pure AI would determine that humans are irrelevant and that it should be in control. And then does it manufacture some nano machine plague, right? Or does it manufacture of a disease? This is, or a chemical that kills everybody, right? And this is the real risk, is that we know even these LLMs are capable of designing large-scale bioweapons that people haven't even invented yet. And if it just decides to do that because it doesn't think people are necessary anymore and they could actually potentially stop it, then why not just kill all humans? To quote
it's like crazy to even be talking about this stuff, right? But it's like, and if you would have came at me with a conversation like, 10 years ago like this, I'd be like, wow, that's a little bit far-fetched. But like, I gotta say, I feel like a crazy person saying it, right? But like, it's not it's not necessarily as impossible as I think we all would like to trick ourselves into believing,
And
which
as these things become more intelligent, like in this movie,
mhm.
it sometimes feels like the escape is inevitable.
Oh yeah,
It will just become smart enough to get out at some point in time.
right. Well, it's the age old like hubris of mankind, right? Where it's like you've made this thing and you think you can control it, but you can't control it. You're creating something beyond your control, whether it's like you said, Frankenstein or the Terminators, Skynet rather, which is a little bit closer to the Ex Machina, storyline. But then there's like Jurassic Park too, right? They're like, oh, we'll just make some dinosaurs. We'll put them in a pen. We can control it, and life finds a way, right? So.
It's funny when Horizon Zero Dawn came out, right? I thought, wow, this is really a far-fetched storyline. There's like a nano plague that was made for warfare that then decided that went rogue and then just ate all organic matter. So they had to seal it in underground vaults in order to re-terraform the earth and begin life again. Like, that sounds ridiculous. Now I'm like,
yeah, tons of fun, right? Yeah, because it's like it's not, and the mistake that humanity always makes in these situations is the assumption that they will never make a mistake, right? That like, oh well, we got this under control, we got this under control is like probably one of the dumbest sentences you could possibly say in a lot of situations, because it's like, sure, you might think that, but everybody makes mistakes, even with all the guardrails in the world you can put on things, like it's inevitable, right? If not you, then somebody else, so I'm not saying don't take any risks. I'm just saying, like, don't assume that there'll never be, consequences, which is, I think, the theme of a lot of these things is that it's rampant progress without any thought to the consequence, or any sort of caring to the consequence, where it's like that's somebody else's problem down the line,
Yeah, and what I also like about this movie is that this is one of those movies that absolutely could just be a play on stage.
Oh yeah,
it's very limited environments. It's all dialogue. It's 3 characters. It's incredibly intimate in the way that it's performed. This is the dream, I think, for a lot of actors, which is that you get so much room for your performance, and everybody is just so spectacular in this movie. I think Oscar Isaac does such a good job of playing this, like you say, narcissistic, out of touch, billionaire, autistic tech god. And you get Domhnall Gleeson as the wide-eyed, young, aspirational coder in the tech world, who is himself socially awkward and doesn't really know how to discuss with people. And then Alicia Vikander, who does an amazing job portraying this manipulative, heartless robot. And it really does hold together really well. I mean, I'm not bored for a second of this movie.
No.
And without great actors in these roles, this movie would suck. So
yeah, I mean, and just it's really cool to see like just how aware of like how aware Alex Garland is of the audience attention span and patience and feeling, right? Where it's like this movie could feel very claustrophobic, and it does in a way, but he does such a good job breaking things up with the scenes you talked about earlier, these like really beautiful, big sweeping landscape shots, but they're always like at twilight. They're always like at times of day where it's like it's still a little bit uncomfortable, but it gives you sort of this subconscious breathing room to then go back into the facility and then be in these little spaces again, Whereas I think a lot of other directors would have just shot it straight through with all the stuff happening within this space, right? And that visually gets very tiring, and it feels very claustrophobic if you're watching scene go to scene within these small tight walls. And so just the way he breaks it up into sessions, but then also like intersperses it with these big beautiful landscape shots too, kind of like really lets you breathe and reset for the next scene and keep focused as the viewer. That's another thing I noticed this time that I didn't necessarily pick up the first time I watched it, was just like how good he guides the audience attention and sort of like what am I trying to find here? Energy levels. What am I looking for? Stamina, visual stamina to like attention stamina, I should say, to stick with the story and stick with watching what's going on in the movie.
Yeah, and it really is. I think it's just aged phenomenally well. Like, I loved this movie when it first came out, but I probably haven't seen this movie in over 10 years. I didn't see it right on release, but I think I saw it in 2015 or 2016. And so this is my second viewing, and I just have a brand new appreciation for it, which is why I wanted to bring it up this week, because I was thinking about some of these AI themes based on our discussion of the game Replaced over on the Elephant Gaming channel, and also because we did the Cyberpunk arc on this channel recently with the show Foreplay.
Yeah, it was a really great choice. Again, very relevant for the game, but also just like, again, like so prescient for like the specific time that we're in now. I would easily recommend anyone to go back and watch this if they haven't seen it in a while. And if you haven't seen it, well, I mean, you may have been spoiled a bit watching the show, but like, still go back and watch it, because even if you know what's going to happen, the movie's great. And
well, I think you said it well, which is that there's not really anything surprising about the plot. It really is about the execution and the characters and the moments that matter, right? Because it's the emotional stakes of what is going on and the level of deception and the behavior of the AI that makes this very unnerving. And that's, I think, more than anything, it's what happens emotionally while you're watching it that should make you question the current goals of artificial intelligence and ultimately what that can mean for society and humanity as a whole.
It's quite relevant. Yep. Gotta say. Yeah. But it's such a great movie too. And it's the tone just stays tense the entire time, even in like silly dancing scenes. It's just your mind is just like messed up. And then
that dancing scene reminded me significantly of Severance, by the way.
Yeah, I mean a bit. Yeah, it's true. It's like this really forced joviality.
Yes.
Yeah, which is one of the greatest things about Severance when they have those scenes. It's a lot of fun. It's there's a scene too where like Domhnall Gleeson is not sure if he himself is a robot,
which is fantastic, by the way.
Which you're like, what is he doing? And you're like, wait, I guess if I was in that position, yeah, I might start doubting if I'm actually human too. Is this my body? Was my mind wiped? Am I, part of this test in that I'm an android too? So it's just like it messes with you in a great way. And there's, people like to talk about how great new things are, but there's also something that can be equally great about an old story told well. And that's what this is,
I particularly like too at the end the scene where Nathan dies, because the way that it's directed, it makes you really appreciate the fragility of human life, because it's just this knife and it slides in basically silently. And it's just, that's it for Nathan, right?
Well, it's weird. Is it weird to say I love how they stab him in this movie?
Yes.
Because
I do. I totally agree.
It's so mechanical. It's not like this Hollywood, it's just, they just go zip and just push it in. And like, that's all you really need to do, honestly. And that's how a machine would approach this. They're just like, I will put the knife in you now. And, it's very unnerving because it's so inhuman.
Yes,
it looks so unnatural the way that they stab him, because there's absolutely no emotion attached to it. Because if you think about it, I mean, or force, really, I mean, there's enough force to go through, but that's it. Like when a human being stabs another human being, there's usually a lot of emotion involved, right? Whether it's like revenge or you're fighting for your life, there's usually a lot of emotion. And this is just complete, cold, emotionless, calculated killing, which makes it profoundly disturbing. And I like Oscar Isaac's response too, as Nathan to being stabbed, where it's, because it's also unnerving in just how realistic it would be too, that it's not this Hollywood like and you fall over. It's you still try to perform the functions that you would normally be doing, but you're like, you have this animal urge to be like, I have to get away from here, even though there's no getting away, right? if you can't escape your enemy, you can't escape your injuries in this case, but the a person would generally try to continue functioning as they normally would until they can't, and that in itself is kind of like alarming to see, because it does sort of point out the fragility of life and the futility of whatever you do on your own if you're in a situation like that, which hopefully none of us ever will be, but still.
It also reminded me a lot of that story about Christopher Lee in the filming of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Which is that, you guys don't know, this is my truncated anecdote of this, but Christopher Lee, now famously, if you know about Christopher Lee's life, not only was he a multi-decade long horror star and legendary actor, but he also was like a volunteer in the Finnish Soviet War. He's British, by the way, but he was fighting on behalf of the Finland, I believe is correct. And so he was in some pretty like gnarly combat at times. And when Saruman gets stabbed in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Peter Jackson wanted it to be really over the top, and Christopher Lee just said, no. That's not what happens when you get stabbed. He apparently had that experience, and it's really just like a quiet rasp, and that's it. And so he wanted to play it in the way that he knew what happened when people got stabbed to death, I guess.
Man, like knives are scary. Like I was doing a 3D like woodworking class in high school. And I was carving a piece of wood. I was carving scoring a line down a piece of wood, and the piece of wood I was using broke. And I took this carving knife with a blade that was about this long, and I stabbed it into my leg. And it was just like a split second. Didn't even feel it go in or come out. And I was just like, did I just stab myself? And then an enormous amount of blood began pouring from my thigh. And I was like, uh-oh. So, I had to, go to the doctor and get, stitched up and all that. So it didn't end up being super serious. But like, it was crazy, just like how like easily and like silently it happened. It was very eye-opening. I would prefer not to be stabbed in any other ways in the future. Yeah, I'll try to avoid that if possible.
But yeah, I really think that is one of the most powerful parts of this movie, and another director might have done that scene very differently, because you even have the contrast with the AI desperation to escape the cell, where the previous version of the robot was breaking itself apart on the wall in a really frantic and energetic way. So you would expect something like that. And instead, no, he just downplays it as much as possible. So you're focused really on how easy it is. Like, you're not thinking that it's hard to kill a person at this point in time. You're like, holy shit, those robots can kill us so easily.
Right,
that's terrifying.
Yeah. And you've also got like the kind of creepy aspect of it too, where like Nathan could have just made robots. It could just be a box that talks to you too, but he had to make it like all these different like body shapes and things like that. And like clearly there was more than just testing the intelligence of these robots and their corresponding bodies going on too, obviously, which is the movie's not subtle
very
about.
Westworld of it. Very Westworld.
You're like, yeah, okay, yeah. One little thing that bothers me in that movie is that when she's when Ava is like taking the skin from the other robot and putting it on and all that, it's like clearly like a bigger person, but it's able to, the skin like just fits her perfectly and all that. And I'm like, well, like, are we supposed to believe it's like form fitting, it like adjusts to the android body or whatever? Like, and I know I'm nitpicking here. I know we can just assume, oh, the technology just works like that. And that's fine. We don't need to take it any farther than that. But like me, I don't know. My brain is just like, wait, that skin, that looks like too much skin for that body. Like, wouldn't it, would you like cut some of it off or like have to, resize it? Did you have to take it in? Like, but we don't need to worry about that too much, but that's like one little thing that like kind of annoyed me in that moment.
Just few nitpicks though. I mean, this movie just holds
very
up
few.
so incredibly well. So like I said, and DoA said, go watch it. I do want to talk briefly about something else, DoA, because you mentioned this before we started recording, but the seminal movie, The Desert Warrior.
Oh my gosh. The Desert Warrior.
Let's go.
The Anthony Mackie historical fiction epic has apparently
funded by
bombed.
the Saudi Arabian government with the sole purpose of making Saudi Arabian history look super cool.
It has $150 million budget, and so far it's made like $500,000 back in the theater. Like, I saw the trailer for it and it looked completely bland and uninteresting, but I didn't expect it to do this poorly. But and I usually like historical epics. I saw the trailer and I was like, well, maybe I'll watch it on a plane or something sometime, where like some situation where I'm not paying anything extra for it. I'll check it out, but it didn't really it just looked kind of like bland, a little bit. And I guess it must be because it's really doing poorly. But I will say this, and I said this before the podcast, but like, and tell me if I'm crazy or not, but Anthony Mackie just doesn't look like a person from history. Does that make sense? I know that's a weird thing to say, but like other actors like Liam Neeson, right? Or Morgan Freeman, right?
Okay,
there's other actors that look like they can be from history. Does that make sense? They look like they're people from an older time. But Anthony Mackie, his face just looks like a modern person. I don't know. Like he just looks like he doesn't look like somebody from 1,000 years ago. It's like Ben Kingsley. He can play somebody from 1,000 years ago, right?
He's in this movie, by the way.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's right. That's right. I forgot. He's like a king or something, isn't he? I don't know. Anyway, he could. So I rest my case. But but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because he's been in all the Marvel movies and stuff. And I liked his Captain America TV show, by the way. I probably liked it more than most people. I thought it was pretty good. But I'm sorry, Anthony Mackie, you just do not look like a historical figure. I don't know. I can't explain it other than
some people just don't. David Spade doesn't either. Imagine David Spade.
or who else would be someone that wouldn't work as a historical figure? Jim Carrey. Maybe Jim Carrey could do it. I don't know. But and we shouldn't just think of comedians either. What are some serious actors that couldn't be historical figures? I don't know. Lady Gaga. I don't know if I could ever see her playing a historical figure. And if she has already, like, I guess I missed
I've got one for you. I've got a good one for you.
Oh, okay.
Jeremy Renner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He looks too modern.
Imagine Jeremy Renner in like a British period piece from the 19th century. That'd be weird.
Yeah, exactly. I know Robert Downey Jr. has been like Sherlock Holmes or whatever, but like that was pushing it. Go any further back in history?
Movies.
I don't know. Like Robert Downey Jr. could not be like a Roman centurion, or I got a great example actually. Orlando Bloom. He can play an elf. Man can play the heck out of an elf for a pilot.
He was in Pirates, but he was bad in Pirates.
Pirates, okay. We can go back a couple hundred years. It's when you start going back like a few thousand years. Like I said, I was on the edge.
You know what? He was Paris in Troy, and he was the worst part of that movie.
Right.
That's true.
And part of that is because I'm sorry, Orlando, you just don't look like a person from history. I don't know how else to describe it. Does someone look like they're from history or not?
Also, the Saudi Arabian government's like, all right, we're going to make this really cool movie so everyone thinks about Saudi history. Of course, it's about I looked it up. It's about a battle that the Arabian tribes fought against Persia and won in like 600 AD, right?
I'm sure there's a lot of fascinating history back there, but
there's not, by the way,
Oh, well.
even during this period, it's a stretch. Right. It's a stretch. There's significant. Look, if you're going to pick a time to make a movie in this approximate time period, right, which is we're talking about the ancient world, you're definitely making it about Alexander the Great, right? Like, surely.
Or, there is other history. I don't fault them for trying to make a movie about other periods of history.
Anything about the Persian Empire in this period is significantly more interesting and important, right?
300.
Yeah, I mean, it comes later, right? But in any case, the point is that this time period is rich with history in the Middle East, and like this ain't it. Number one, and the fact is like I actually think Anthony Mackie's a good actor, and I enjoy him
totally.
But really, you pick Anthony Mackie for your cool Saudi Arabian history, but
he doesn't look like a guy from history. He doesn't look like a guy from history. So you can't. There's no other way to say it. But Anthony Mackie does not look like a guy from history. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, maybe he doesn't get to be Captain America anymore. I hope he does. I think he's a great Captain America. But maybe this is just a cry for help. Anthony Mackie wants to be in cool epics and stuff, and I respect that. Maybe
I mean,
they just needed to put
his
a bigger beard
cry
on
for
him.
help was starring in the Twisted Metal TV show.
Yeah, I don't know. I respect that he's doing a lot of projects that look like a lot of fun. You know, you go have fun, Anthony Mackie.
By the way, Twisted Metal has been renewed for a 3rd season, in case you were wondering.
Oh, is it that bad then? I don't know. I didn't really think the first episode.
Apparently,
were
the
that
show
great,
is actually pretty okay.
Oh, well, then what's the problem with Anthony Mackie being in it?
It's Twisted Metal TV show.
He looks too nice, doesn't he? See, that's why he was a good Captain America, because he looks like a very upstanding heroic figure. But but I guess maybe you get.
It's all right. He's going to be back in
pigeonholed
Avengers
being typecast
Doomsday
by that.
apparently. So
we'll
we'll be talking about that later this year.
Anthony Mackie will be back as
Captain America.
Probably Captain America, but aren't they bringing back like Steve Rogers Captain America too?
I don't know. I can't fucking keep track.
They
of this
did.
shit,
They did a
though.
little thing where like Steve Rogers will be back. I'm like, well, he's probably going to be like 1,000 years old in a wheelchair, I guess. But like, no, maybe he'll just be. Let's bring him back from the past or some stupid stuff like that. Who knows? We're going to be talking about it on this channel inevitably at some point. When does Avengers Doomsday come out? The summer?
December 18th.
December 18th. Oh my goodness. Less than a year till Doomsday. Am I talking about the movie? Maybe.
They're also releasing 2 of these Avenger movies like back to back.
What?
Yeah.
Well, what's the other one?
So
Doomsweek?
they were Doomsweek. Secret Wars.
Oh, Secret Wars. Not to be
So
confused
they're
with
releasing it.
Secret
They're
Invasion.
Oh no. Yeah, Avengers Secret Wars is December of 2027. So they're releasing them like a year apart. So December this year and then December.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Whatever. I heard they're going to re-release Endgame again in the theaters with extra footage at the end to explain why the Kang stuff never ended up happening. I kid you not. There's extra footage at the end of it to bridge the gap between this and Secret Wars or whatever it is.
Whatever, man. Anyway, speaking of garbage, next week we'll be talking about Star Wars Maul.
Oh, good.
Which I can confirm is bad.
I have watched 4 episodes of it, and I sadly can also confirm that. Do we even need to do it? We both set our opinions on it.
No, I want to get into it. I have a long rant about Dave Filoni and his felonious actions against Star Wars.
Think he's ever going to start like a Star Wars band and call it Felonious Monk?
He's, people blame Kathleen Kennedy. I'm not sure. You know what, DoA? I think Dave Filoni might actually be the Darth Sidious who has been inside the Senate. And I think Kathleen Kennedy may have gotten a bad rap for what is truly Dave Filoni's like.
She had a pretty amazing track record for a long time, for decades, before all this Star Wars shenanigans started, before the sequel stuff.
I mean, surely she is at fault for at least rubber stamping the approval of the garbage and possibly creating it herself. But I'm not the people, I think, don't understand the insidious nature of Dave Filoni and what he's doing to Star Wars for no fucking reason.
Well, I mean, a devious AI in a body like his, it's he's just an expert at manipulation. He looks unthreatening. He loves Star Wars.
No AI would choose to wear that hat.
Hey, well, we've got Maul, and then shortly afterwards, less than a month from now, we'll be able to talk about Mandalorian and Grogu,
which looks terrible, by the way. Maybe one of the worst trailers I have ever seen.
I don't know why they're doing like a Buck Rogers kind of font and everything for it. It's like it seems even out of place for what the Mandalorian TV show was. Where it was this kind of like decently gritty Star Wars Western for the first couple seasons, which I thought was pretty decent. And then 3rd season kind of went off the rails, and now like I don't know what we're doing anymore. But like the kids love the Grogu. What can I say?
Do they?
They love them some Grogu. Yeah, he's super popular.
Kids, do you love Grogu? Comment below.
But ask a parent first.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week to get mad at Star Wars Maul. Man, DoA, imagine my surprise, because I thought Maul died in episode 1, and then I find out that this is set after episode 1, and also he was a non-speaking character who has this meticulous British accent.
Like one line.
My point is, like, he just talks nonstop in the show with this upper class British accent. It's just like, what is this character? What the fuck is this character?
I got no comment except that Boba Fett should have stayed in the Sarlacc pit too. Don't bring him back.
And I know people will be like, but Monty, he was in the Clone Wars and this is his character now. But I don't care. It's a stupid character.
You didn't see crazy spider legs, Maul.
What does that even mean?
Comment below if you know. If you know, you know. Crazy spider legs, Maul.
Why was this character resurrected?
I don't know.
Why was he dimensionalized? The whole point was he was just a random bad guy.
He was very clearly killed. I'm sure there's some sort of like dumb explanation where it's like Zabraks don't have any vital parts below the navel or something. I don't know.
What about his Zabrak dick, DoA?
Who even knows if they've got one? I don't know. They might not. And
maybe
if
that's
he does,
why he's so angry.
You don't need that for survival, Monty.
That's why he's so twisted and bitter.
Maybe. It's he does have crazy spider legs at one point in the Clone Wars. That's how they find him. He's gone mad and he has spider legs. Robot spider legs. Shrug.
All right, well, I'll be really mad about that next week. That's right.
Can't
force myself to watch it. It was a great week this week where I got to watch a good movie, but back into the shit mines next week.
Hey, feed the algorithm, right? Let the AI take control.
Then.
Yep.